The next Iron Gwazi is already in the works, and the world's best coaster is about to open in a surprisingly unexpected park. I'm gonna go through everything we know about this new awesome coaster and its sheer insanity. Get ready, cause not only is the world's best coaster about to open, but it's about to transform its park into one of the top parks in the country and potentially wage one of the craziest coaster wars in history. It was only a few years ago when the announcement for Iron Gwazi first came, and since then, Iron Gwazi has become one of the greatest coasters to ever exist on the planet. But what if I told you that a better coaster is already in the planning stages? A coaster that could take the crown from Iron Gwazi and grow the park it opens at to a world-class theme park. Iron Gwazi is one of the happiest stories in the coaster industry. Not only were expectations sky high for this coaster, but it managed to exceed all expectations and become arguably the best coaster in the world. After such success, it was only a matter of time before another park jumped on the RMC train to make another attempt at the world's best coaster, and that time has finally arrived. It looks as if the best RMC to ever exist is on its way, and it truly looks like we're about to see the world's best coaster. A coaster that could become Iron Gwazi 2.0, as well as potentially win over both Velocicoaster and Steel Vengeance. I know the last couple of years have been filled with new best coasters, and it seems like every major coaster to ever be announced is talked about to possibly become the new #1. I mean, since Steel Vengeance in 2018, we had Zadra, Velocicoaster, Iron Gwazi, and even Airy Force 1, all talked about by many as the new world's best coaster. This time, however, it's different. This time it's Iron Gwazi's own company that is getting ready to build another RMC, and they definitely did it right the first time. So chances are they'll get it right again. Iron Gwazi is located at Busch Gardens, Tampa in Tampa, Florida, and is owned by SeaWorld Entertainment. The SeaWorld chain currently operates 4 other major theme parks across the United States, including Busch Gardens Williamsburg, SeaWorld Orlando, SeaWorld Antonio, and SeaWorld San Diego. Like every chain, the SeaWorld chain doesn't treat all their parks equally, and some of their parks get new coasters pretty often, while others may not get additions as frequently. From the 5 major parks the chain operates, the Busch Gardens parks are usually treated a lot better than the SeaWorld named parks. The SeaWorld parks originally were very focused on sea animals, hence the name SeaWorld. The SeaWorld chain went through a lot of struggles over the last decade, and though that's not what I'd like to highlight in this video, the chain has made the move to shift the focus of their SeaWorld named parks from animals and shows to roller coasters. That being said, the Busch Gardens parks overall have still been treated better than the SeaWorld parks most of the time. Busch Gardens Tampa might be a slightly better park today, though others may tell you they enjoy Busch Gardens Williamsburg more. SeaWorld Orlando was also up there and gets new additions pretty often, especially as of late. Still though, the 2 Busch Gardens parks are definitely SeaWorld's best and are some of the greatest theme parks in the entire country today. Looking at the 2 Busch Gardens parks, you'll notice they are both stacked with awesome coasters. Busch Gardens Tampa recently opened the delayed Iron Gwazi after being delayed twice. First from 2020 to 2021, and then from 2021 to 2022. Iron Gwazi was sitting and staring us all in the face for 2 years, and it seemed as if the coaster's hype was dying down. But when it opened, it proved to be the exact opposite. Iron Gwazi finally opened to the public on March 11th, 2022, and little did we all know, the theme park industry would never be the same after it opened. Fans flocked from across the globe to visit Busch Gardens Tampa and get the first rides on their brand new attraction. Iron Gwazi wasn't just a great ride, it was the final piece of the puzzle completing Busch Gardens Tampa into a world-class park. Iron Gwazi was so well received that I think it may have done more for Busch Gardens than any of the other RMCs to have opened so far. SeaWorld, seeing the success of their first RMC, would be stupid to not try and replicate it. That's exactly why I made a video recently sharing why I thought SeaWorld would likely want to outdo Iron Gwazi, and speculating where and when I think we could see Iron Gwazi 2.0. Little did I know that just days after releasing that video, Iron Gwazi 2.0 was already becoming a reality. Busch Gardens Tampa and Busch Gardens Williamsburg like to mirror each other pretty often when it comes to getting new coasters. Both parks got B&M dive coasters around the same time in the 2000s, and both parks ended up getting B&M inverts around the same time too. Both Busch Gardens parks got kiddie coasters at the same time, and both parks also got family coasters within a few years of each other. Not only that, but both parks got multi-launch coasters almost a year apart, though they were from two totally different manufacturers, and of course both parks got the famous Premier Rides launch coaster clones known as the Skyrocket 2. The Busch Gardens parks really like to mirror each other when they can, though sometimes the park's location may limit it at times from getting certain coasters. For example, Busch Gardens Tampa isn't really able to get a B&M Hyper coaster, floorless coaster, flying coaster, or surf coaster, since SeaWorld Orlando, just an hour away, already offers these coaster models. The SeaWorld chain likes to keep their two Florida parks coaster lineups pretty different from each other. The SeaWorld chain wants to keep the parks very unique from each other in order to sell tickets for both parks to people who plan a Florida vacation. SeaWorld wants its visitors to visit both SeaWorld Orlando and Busch Gardens Tampa during their vacation to Florida. Not only is Busch Gardens Tampa limited to getting unique coasters for its area, but they also have a sort of height restriction when it comes to building new attractions. Busch Gardens Williamsburg, on the other hand, has King's Dominion to consider when it comes to opening new attractions, since the two parks are in really close proximity to each other. SeaWorld built Iron Gwazi pretty recently, and with the history the two Busch Gardens parks have in terms of mirroring coasters, it only makes sense that RMC is on its way to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, right? Well, kinda. You see, Busch Gardens Williamsburg has two problems with getting an RMC. Their first problem is King's Dominion. King's Dominion is just a few miles down the road from Busch Gardens and is their largest competitor currently. Operated by the Cedar chain, King's Dominion is a solid park and has a pretty good lineup of coasters. Cedar neglected King's Dominion for a while, but as of late, they've been making a major push towards improving the park's atmosphere and overall experience. When it comes to new coasters, Busch Gardens and King's Dominion try not to step on each other's toes. This limits the two parks a lot when it comes to purchasing a new coaster. For example, King's Dominion never got a B&M Hyper coaster when Cedar Fair was purchasing ones for all the Paramount parks they bought in 2006. Busch Gardens Williamsburg already had a Hyper coaster for years then, and adding the same coaster model as your competitor doesn't always bode so well. It's interesting how Busch Gardens Williamsburg and King's Dominion keep their coaster lineups pretty unique from each other, because it doesn't always work like that when parks compete. Six Flags Great Adventure and Hershey Park are actually the exact opposite, with the two parks having extremely similar coaster lineups and with each park constantly trying to outdo the other with the same exact model. That's a topic for another video I'll hopefully do sometime in the future, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join the theme park fun and excitement. Back to Busch Gardens though, since they don't like to step on King's Dominion's toes when it comes to getting new coasters, RMC may be a slight issue for them. King's Dominion opened their RMC Twisted Timbers in 2018, and it's currently one of the best coasters in existence. If Busch Gardens Williamsburg wanted to build their own RMC, it would either have to be so much better and crazier than Twisted Timbers, or it would have to be significantly different in order to differentiate as much as possible between the two rides. There's a few things Busch Gardens can do to open an RMC different enough from King's Dominion. After all, RMC does have more than one coaster model. A Raptor, for example, is something very different than an iBox coaster, and Busch Gardens would definitely be able to open one of those without a problem. If they wanted an iBox coaster specifically though, and not a Raptor, they'd most likely have to go all out when building the coaster, which leads me to the second problem Busch Gardens has in regards to RMC. That is, Busch Gardens Williamsburg doesn't currently have any old wooden coasters that would be prime for treatment from RMC. That means an RMC at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is automatically gonna be ground up, which could lead to something very exciting. Busch Gardens Williamsburg recently filed plans for something called Project 2024. Most of what we know about this potential 2024 edition is rumor and speculation, and it could change in the blink of an eye. That being said, Busch Gardens filed for a 220-foot tall attraction to open at their park in 2024. This new attraction looks like it will take Drakkenspyre's old plot of land that has been sitting vacant for quite some time. A 20-foot coaster screams RMC, but before I tell you why, let's take a second to realize how crazy Busch Gardens Williamsburg would become if this mysterious new hypercoaster actually gets built. Busch Gardens Williamsburg would have just opened back-to-back coasters 3 years in a row. First with Pantheon, which opened in 2022, and then Dark Coaster in 2023. After those two awesome coasters, just a year later, they'll be opening their 220-foot Mysterious Project 2024 coaster for 2024. Pantheon is one of the best rides at Busch Gardens and is definitely a great launch coaster. At the time it opened, it became the park's third multi-launch coaster, but that wasn't enough for Busch Gardens. For 2023, they are opening a new roller coaster replacing Curse of the Dark Castle, which will be their fourth coaster to feature a launch. Dark Coaster is a very unique family coaster offering some super cool experiences. The coaster's trains are very unique, and the coaster will even traverse its course twice by utilizing one of Intamin's new state-of-the-art switch tracks. Then they get another new coaster for 2024, which seems it'll finally be a coaster they get that doesn't have a launch. Project 2024 is possible to be many different coaster models, but I think it's going to be an RMC. The way the Busch Gardens parks mirror each other, RMC makes perfect sense for this park's next coaster. Iron Gwazi was such a success that if there's ever a time to mirror the other Busch Gardens parks coaster editions, it's now. The 220 feet described in this rumor 2024 project also makes perfect sense for RMC. The tallest RMC in existence right now is Iron Gwazi, which is just a drop shorter than that. 220 feet is enough to beat Iron Gwazi's record while leaving an extra few feet of leeway in case another park decides to break Iron Gwazi's record first. If this rumored 2024 coaster for Busch Gardens Williamsburg is in fact an RMC, then I'd bet on it being not only the world's tallest RMC, but the world's steepest as well. Once it's the world's tallest, it'll probably end up being the fastest RMC ever too, thereby breaking all of Iron Gwazi's records and any potential records Hershey Park's Wildcat may break. If this coaster actually comes to life, Busch Gardens Williamsburg will be setting themselves up for success in what could possibly become the park's best investment ever. Though it makes a ton of sense for Busch Gardens Williamsburg to go the RMC iBox route, there are still other coaster models RMC offers. Busch Gardens may want to go for a Raptor, but I really doubt it. RMC's Raptor models haven't performed even close to as good as their iBox models, and the Raptors also have a major capacity issue. I definitely think the SeaWorld chain will consider opening dueling Raptors at one of their parks, but I feel that would make more sense at SeaWorld Orlando in order to be different enough from Iron Gwazi right nearby. The T-Rex model may also be in the cards, but I'm not sure if it's even available yet, as RMC has been putting a heavy focus on their Raptors for now. A T-Rex would be awesome to see, but I doubt SeaWorld will be interested in a prototype either way. But you never know. It is also important to highlight that this coaster isn't definitely going to be an RMC. Though there is a ton of evidence, in my opinion, pointing to an RMC at Busch Gardens Williamsburg for Project 2024, it is possible the 220-foot registered height for this mysterious new attraction is for something else entirely. Busch Gardens Williamsburg and the SeaWorld chain as a whole have a pretty good relationship with Intamin. They just opened Pantheon for 2022 and are about to open another Intamin thrill machine for 2023 with Dark Coaster. Busch Gardens may very well have worked out a 3-coaster deal with Intamin, and this could maybe be some sort of Intamin hyper coaster. Honestly though, I don't understand why the park would go for an Intamin with RMC staring them straight in the face. I've also heard the idea that maybe Busch Gardens Williamsburg is opening the tallest B&M wing coaster on the planet. And to that I say, nope. B&M wing coasters are nice, and it would be cool to see Busch Gardens open one before King's Dominion gets a chance too. But there's no way a park is going to take a B&M wing over an RMC. Why would they want to open another major non-elite coaster? Busch Gardens Williamsburg has some pretty big gaps in their lineup. They are already filling a major one with the Dark Coaster for 2023, but they still have one more major gap. They are lacking that one major elite coaster that is easily everyone's favorite at the park. They are lacking one of those coasters that are so elite they draw in crowds from across the world. They are lacking a coaster that's actually top 10 worthy. An RMC that becomes Iron Gwazi 2.0 would definitely fix this issue and could transform Busch Gardens Williamsburg into one of the greatest parks in history. But it's not so simple. Busch Gardens Williamsburg isn't the only park preparing to transform themselves into one of the best parks on earth. There's another park down the road that's slowly becoming the best park in the world, and they are about to top their lineup by opening the world's best coaster. Click here to watch my video on the world's best coaster opening next year. A coaster that will truly destroy Iron Gwazi, Velocicoaster, and even Steel Vengeance.